Okay, let's switch gears a bit for this deep dive. We're looking into something huge that maybe doesn't get the spotlight often, the global heavy truck and off-highway vehicle market.
Right. And off-highway is, a big category. Think construction equipment, those massive mining trucks, heavy farm machinery,
Yeah.
the real industrial workhorses.
Exactly. So we're digging into a market outlook here based on data from cognitive market research. The idea is to really get a feel for the big changes happening, what's behind the growth, where things are headed.
Yeah, and it's crucial because these vehicles, well, they literally move goods and build the world around us. Understanding this market gives you a pretty valuable window into the global economy, infrastructure, everything, really.
So let's start with the size of it all, because the numbers themselves are pretty staggering. This is definitely not a small pond.
No, not at all. And what's really striking isn't just how big it is now, but how fast it's growing. So back in 2021, the global market was valued at about $267.1 billion. dollars.
Okay, that's already a huge number.
It is. And the projections show it climbing pretty steeply. Just 4 years later, for 2025, it's forecast to hit $341 billion. dollars.
Hmm. Okay, that's a solid jump. But the longer view, that's probably where the really interesting part is.
Absolutely. If you look further out, say to 2033, the projection is $555.9 billion. dollars.
Wow. So nearly double the 2021 figure in, what, 12 years? That kind of growth rate suggests some pretty powerful forces are pushing this. What does that work out to, like average growth?
It works out to a compound annual growth rate, the CAGR, of 6.3%,
Hmm.
which, for a market of this size, sustaining over 6% year on year is really strong, shows real underlying demand.
Okay, so what are those forces? Why are we seeing this kind of demand for heavy trucks and off-highway stuff?
Well, fundamentally, it comes down to the industries that need them, right? Industrial logistics, construction, mining, agriculture. They all need bigger, tougher, more efficient machines as activity ramps up.
Well, it's sort of the bedrock.
Exactly. And a huge driver, a real engine for this, is infrastructure development,
Hmm.
especially in emerging economies. Building roads, ports, entire cities. You just can't do that without heavy trucks, moving materials, and excavators preparing the ground. It's essential.
Makes sense. And it's not just more building, right? The vehicles themselves are changing. I'm thinking electrification.
Definitely. Electrification is a big factor now, moving beyond just cars. It's really starting to shape the heavy vehicle market, especially where emission rules are getting stricter. It's challenging, with battery size and weight for these big machines, but the push is there. Lots of innovation happening.
Plus, I guess our own habits play a role. Like, all the online shopping means more stuff needs to be moved around.
It absolutely does. That boom in e-commerce, it creates massive demand on supply chains, which means more heavy freight movement.
Yeah.
Trucks are key for getting goods from, say, a port or warehouse towards the final destination.
Right, right. Okay, so we've got the huge scale, the key things pushing it forward. Where is all this growth actually happening? Let's all dive into the regions.
Yeah, looking at the regional breakdown really shows you where the industrial hotspots and development drives are.
Let's start close to home, North America. The source calls it a powerhouse.
It is, yeah. A very significant chunk of the market is worth about $79.6 billion back in 2021. That's projected to grow to $99 billion by 2025 and then hit $155.2 billion by 2033.
And within North America, how does that break down?
The U.S. is the dominant player, no surprise there. Growing from roughly $67 billion to $83 billion, and then projected $129 billion by 2033. But Canada and Mexico are significant too. Canada's looking at going from about $8 billion to over $16 billion by 2033, and Mexico from just under $5 billion to nearly $10 billion. Reflects ongoing activity across the board.
Okay. Let's hop across the pond to Europe. What's the story there?
Europe's also showing really solid growth. It was a $65 billion market in 2021, expected to reach almost $81 billion in 2025, and then $130.2 billion by 2033.
And what's particularly driving things in Europe? Similar factors.
Well, yes, the core demand is there, but Europe's growth is really influenced by two big things: ongoing infrastructure modernization, and maybe even more importantly, those shifts due to emissions regulations. That move towards cleaner vehicles is a very tangible driver there.
Ah, right, that regulatory push. And within Europe, any standouts?
This audio was created with podcastle.ai.
That regulatory push. And within Europe, any standouts?
Yes, Germany leads the pack, projected to hit $25.1 billion by 2033, thanks to its strong industrial base. The UK and France are big players too, hitting nearly $16 billion and almost $14 billion respectively by 2033. But you also see significant numbers from places like Russia, forecast around $16 billion, Spain at $8.3 billion. Italy's growing well too, even smaller countries showing gains. It's widespread.
Okay, now Asia Pacific. The source suggests this region is really the giant here, both in size and growth speed.
That's absolutely right. The numbers are just huge. Asia Pacific was already over $100 billion, 100.6 B in 2021. It's forecast to hit $129 billion in 2025 and then really accelerate to $220.4 billion by 2033.
Whoa, that's almost as big as North America and Europe put together by then. What's behind that scale?
It's really the engine room for global manufacturing and infrastructure build-out. China, as you'd expect, is a massive part of that projected nearly $98 billion by 2033. But India's growth is phenomenal, really rapid. It goes from about $19 billion in 2021 to over $44 billion by 2033. That really signals its development pace. Japan and South Korea together add almost $36 billion by 2033.
And Southeast Asia.
Southeast Asia is also riding that wave of industrialization. Its market is set to basically double, from $15 billion in 2021 to over $31 billion by 2033. And Australia keeps growing steadily, too. It just highlights that direct link. Economic development needs heavy machinery.
Got it. Okay, Latin America. What's the picture there?
In Latin America, a lot of the growth ties into mining and construction sector expansion. Brazil is the key market, projected to hit $11.5 billion by 2033. You see similar trends in places like Argentina, Colombia, Peru, linked to resources.
Wasn't there one country with a particularly high growth rate, though?
Yeah, good catch. Chile stands out. Smaller overall market size, sure, but it has the fastest projected CAGR in the region, 8.2%. It's expected to reach about $1.4 billion by 2033. That likely points to some specific major mining or infrastructure projects kicking into high gear there.
Interesting. Okay, lastly, the Middle East and Africa.
This region is showing, let's say, more modest but still steady growth compared to the others. Egypt's market is forecast to reach $2.2 billion by 2033. Turkey around $1.8 billion. The rest of the Middle East also sees stable growth, expanding collectively from about $1.7 billion to $2.8 billion over that period.
So positive growth, just maybe not the same explosive pace as Asia Pacific?
Exactly. It kind of underlines that the need is global, even if the intensity varies. It's growth based on really fundamental requirements.
Right. And this brings us back to those future trends we mentioned earlier. Electrification, yes, but also automation, digitization, and logistics. How are they actually shaping what comes next for this already huge market?
Well, they're becoming increasingly central, not just nice to haves, especially in places focused on efficiency and cutting emissions. You're seeing automation like autonomous hauling starting in controlled places like mines. Digitization is transforming how fleets are managed, maintenance, routing, and electrification, maybe through hybrid or even hydrogen fuel cells for the really heavy stuff, is becoming more real.
And the source material connects these big tech shifts back to the strong overall market outlook.
It does, because the basic demand from construction, mining, logistics provides that solid foundation. But then layering on automation, digital tools, cleaner power, that adds complexity, yes, but also opportunity. It helps maintain that strong outlook because companies are looking for more efficient, more sustainable ways to operate.
Feels like it's more than just swapping out old trucks for new ones. These trends could really change how these whole industries work.
That's exactly the point.
Yeah.
How does integrating all this tech change not just the trucks or the diggers, but the whole supporting infrastructure, the jobs needed, the way logistics networks function? That's the big question for the next decade.
Okay, so just to wrap this deep dive up, we're talking about a global market for heavy trucks and off-highway vehicles set to basically double from around $267 billion in 2021 to over $555 billion by 2033.
And we've seen that growth is really powered by fundamental needs industry, infrastructure building, e-commerce logistics, plus these big technological shifts towards cleaner, smarter, potentially automated vehicles.
And looking region by region showed us where the action is concentrated, the massive scale in Asia Pacific, the solid base in North America, the regulation-driven changes in Europe, resource expansion in Latin America. It really drives home how vital this sector is to, well, pretty much everything globally.
It really is. It's one of those markets that, yeah, you might not see it directly every day, but it touches so much of modern life.
So here's something to think about. You take that massive growth, that doubling over a decade, and you combine it with these powerful trends, automation, digitization, electrification. How might that combination fundamentally reshape the physical world around you? The roads being built, the mines operating, the farms producing food, even the way packages arrive at your door over the next 10 years. What parts of your daily life could shift as this enormous, essential, and rapidly changing market evolves?
Okay, let's dive into a really fundamental area today. Heavy trucks and off-highway vehicles.
Right. The machines that, well, literally build our world and move nearly everything around us.
Exactly. We've been through a lot of source material on this, and our mission here is to really unpack what's driving this industry. What are the big forces, the challenges, and where's the tech heading?
And it's interesting, isn't it? Because it sounds niche, but the dynamics here ripple outwards. Global infrastructure, supply chains, the energy transition, it's all tied in.
Yeah, the sources really show how this sector's health is kind of a bellwether for the wider economy.
Definitely.
So first up, the material points to some pretty strong growth signals. A lot.
This audio was created with podcastle.ai.
First up, the material points to some pretty strong growth signals. A lot seems fueled by huge infrastructure projects globally.
Massive ones, yeah. Particularly highlighted are places across Asia-Pacific, Africa, Latin America. Think India, Indonesia pouring money into roads, mining.
Which creates demand for very specific vehicles, right? Heavy-duty tippers, dumpers, that sort of thing.
Precisely. But it's not just construction driving it. The sources also flag the e-commerce boom.
Ah, right. Especially in North America and Europe.
Exactly. That's pushing demand for really efficient long-haul logistics. Companies are, well, they're scrambling to upgrade their fleets.
Not just for more capacity, but for better optimization, lower fuel costs, faster turnarounds.
That's paramount, yes. It directly shapes the type of trucks being ordered now.
Okay, so growth is solid, powered by these big global trends. But the environment is a huge pressure point mentioned in the sources.
Oh, absolutely. You got stricter regulations kicking in, things like Euro 6 BSVI emissions standards.
And that's not just tweaking things, is it? It's forcing a real move away from traditional diesel pollutants.
It's a non-negotiable push, yeah. It's accelerating the shift towards, well, entirely new powertrain technologies. We're seeing a real pickup in hybrid and fully electric heavy trucks.
Especially for city routes, the sources suggest.
Right, for urban areas, definitely. And then hydrogen solutions are starting to emerge for the longer hauls. Companies like Volvo and Nikola, the research shows they're investing billions.
Driven by the rules, but also by the operators just needing to cut those fuel bills.
It's both. Environmental mandates and operational economics pushing in the same direction.
So cleaner tech is a major driver, but despite the demand, the sources are clear about significant roadblocks. What are the big ones holding things back?
Well, two really stand out in the material. First, just the sheer cost.
These things are expensive.
Hugely. Multi-million-dollar assets, often. The high upfront cost is a real barrier, especially for smaller operators or in, developing regions.
Makes sense. And the second?
Supply chain volatility. It just hasn't gone away.
Still, chip shortages, raw materials.
All of that, yeah. Unpredictable costs, delays. The sources detail how this directly causes manufacturing holdups and backlogs. It creates a lot of uncertainty.
So a picture emerges.
Yeah.
Strong growth potential, but grappling with costs,
Yeah.
supply chain fragility, and this massive green transition pressure.
That sums it up well.
Looking forward, though, the sources point to some really interesting emerging trends. Connectivity seems key.
Definitely. Telematics is a big one highlighted. Vehicles becoming, essentially, smart connected nodes.
But beyond just tracking location.
Oh, yeah. GPS, onboard diagnostics. The material shows this enables predictive maintenance, fixing things before they break, and optimizing routes to cut fuel waste dramatically.
A shift towards managing them as digital assets, really, boosting uptime.
Precisely. Critical in mining, construction, logistics, you name it.
And electrification isn't just for road trucks, the off-highway stuff too.
Correct. Battery electric tech is making inroads there. Think electric bulldozers, loaders on sites.
Driven less by range and more by local emissions and noise.
Exactly. Especially important in urban construction zones.
And then there's the really futuristic stuff. Autonomy.
Ah, yes. The sources show significant progress, particularly in controlled environments. Mines, large construction sites.
Remote operated vehicles, AI-driven diggers.
Moving beyond just pilots into actual use cases, yeah. The material frames it as a way to boost safety in dangerous jobs and unlock new productivity levels.
Okay, so let's recap this deep dive. We've got growth from infrastructure and logistics, tempered by big challenges, costs, supply chains,
Right.
all happening under this huge regulatory push for cleaner tech.
And underpinned by digitization and automation shaping the future.
Yeah, the material really paints a picture of these forces converging, setting up what it calls a transformative decade.
It does. A future where mobility, sustainability, automation, they don't just change the machines. They fundamentally change how we build things and move goods.
A transformative decade. That's quite a thought. So connecting this back to you listening, if we really see truly autonomous, sustainable, heavy machinery become widespread, what might that actually mean for your daily life in ways maybe you haven't considered, far beyond the construction site or the highway?
Yep.
What are those ripple effects? Something to think about.
This audio was created with podcastle.ai.